Privyet. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this extra special session where we're going to be talking about the human face of big data. We've got a very, very important group of speakers. For those who are Russian speakers, please get your translation if you need it. Otherwise, most of this panel will be conducted in English. I'd like to introduce you to our panelists sitting in front of you. On your right, we are very privileged and very proud to have with us Rashid Ismailov, who is the Deputy Minister of Telecom and Mass Communication of the Russian Federation, a real visionary in terms of looking at how to mobilize and to improve the intercommunication right across Russia, all 83 regions, and is overseeing the development of the IT industry with international cooperation, and has a vast experience in working with international organizations, looking at all of the key issues of what is needed in Russia to improve broadband capability, data capability, and also to improve the lives of Russian citizens. Before joining the Ministry of Communications, Rashid spent more than 20 years working for various telecom and IT companies, so he is perfectly qualified to conduct the highest level of this kind of future implementation and innovation in Russia. Please give him a big, warm welcome. Next to the Deputy Minister, we have the only lady here today with us, Maelle Gavet, who is the CEO of OZON Holdings, Chief Executive Officer, which is OZON.ru, OZON.travel, and recently they acquired Zapato, very important company here in Russia. Those of you that understand the future of that kind of consumer business, you need a lot of special understanding of data and big data. And before she developed her company, OZON, she had a very effective background at the Boston Consulting Group and is originally from France. So, Maelle, welcome to the session today. We are very, very pleased to have you with us. Next, we have one of the most popular people in Russia, and that is a gentleman who is popular because he is with Alibaba. So we'd like to introduce Mark Zavadskiy, who is Business Development Director for Russia and CIS markets for Alibaba. 2 months ago, when he started at Alibaba, he couldn't find any friends. And when Alibaba had the IPO, for $270 billion. Now everybody loves him. So please give Mark a big, warm applause. Mark. Then we'd like to introduce all the way from Shenzhen in China, Paul Michael Scanlan. Paul, there he is. Paul is the President of Business and Network Consulting at Huawei. A very, very experienced professional in the business of data and data implementation, and is responsible for running a team of 600 people plus many, many more all over the world, developing all of the business for Huawei. He is a consummate professional with over 30 years of experience, starting in the telco business many, many years ago in Australia, but literally going to a different country almost every 2 days, and with exceptional knowledge of Asia and the fast-moving development of mobile data, mobile broadband implementation and construction. So Paul, welcome, and great to have Huawei here with us in Moscow. Welcome. Next, we are very pleased to have with us Alexander Gornyy. Alexander, welcome. Alexander is the CIO, Chief Information Officer at Maelle.ru. Maelle.ru, a very large, very successful group. Now also owns, as everybody knows, VK, which is now part of Maelle.ru. And Alexander is responsible for group cooperation with technology startups, and he is very, very experienced in Maelle.ru, having worked in many different divisions in Maelle.ru. So, Alexander, welcome, and very good to see you. And then, last but by no means least, we'd like to introduce a friend of ours from Shanghai. We'd like to introduce Mr. Seong Jeongmin. And Mr. Seong is a senior fellow at the McKinsey Global Institute. McKinsey, who do great work all over the world in interesting areas of data and data implementation. He is a senior fellow at the Institute, and he's the deputy head of McKinsey's Institute's China Hub, as well as leading all of the research into China. And we're going to begin today, Mr. Seong, with you making a presentation. And so we would like to, first of all, say welcome, ni hao. And we would like to ask if you'd like to step forward and come and do your presentation here.
So we are talking about technology, and I think we have some delay and latency in terms of technology. So let's get the right presentation up.
Just pull that up, yeah, so that we can do the right slide.
So in the meanwhile, so let me just briefly introduce myself. My name is Jeongmin, based in Shanghai, and so the topic that I'm going to share today is about digital revolution in China, right? And we are going to talk about overall digital. So, but I hope China can be a good example as a basis for discussion today. And then we all know about this exciting Alibaba story as well. And this research is actually fresh from the oven, right? So we just released this report 2 months ago to describe what is really happening in China and what's the economic impact of digital revolution. Yeah, okay. So yeah. No. Okay. So mainly, there are 4, main messages that I would like to share. So the first message is about the size of the digital economy in China. So, everyone, talks about internet, digital, and it is important, right? But then the question is, how big is it, right? So we put some quantitative perspective on this, and we quantified the size of the internet economy, and then the contribution to China's GDP going forward. And then the answer is that it is big, right? So we are going to share the real number, and so the answer is that the internet economy in China is big, and it's going to be even bigger going forward, contributing 1/5 of the growth going forward. So that's our first message. And then second message is even more important, right? Something beyond the number, and which is also Premier Li Keqiang shared in the morning session, right? So the Chinese growth model, right, has been largely dependent on huge capital investment, labor force expansion, and export, right? And this model is not going to be sustainable going forward. And then we believe that internet is going to actually change the nature of the growth in China, by introducing a different economic model, that is driven by higher productivity, better innovation, and more consumption. So which is even more important than the size of the opportunity. So that is our second message. And third message is that yes, internet is one internet, but then depending on the sectors, there will be different types of applications. So when you think about the business opportunities and application of the internet, you need to have a different perspective by sector, because the challenges that every sector is facing is different. So you need to have a sector level view. That's our third message. And the last message is that, so this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, right? So this digital revolution is unprecedented. So if you manage this well, you will become a competitive country and your company will be a winner. If not, you will be left behind, right? So, government, companies and individuals, we all need to take decisive action. So that's our last message. So start from the first point, right? The size of the internet economy, right? So we introduced the concept of so-called IGDP, so internet GDP. So it sounds very cool, but actually very simple, right? So basically, adding up all internet-related expenditure and calculate the size as percentage of GDP, right? So if you look at the actual the result of the calculation, right? So China's IGDP is 4.4. So 4.4% of the internet the GDP is actually coming from internet. So which is big, right? Even bigger than some of the developed countries. Such as United States and France and Germany, right? And then if you look at the speed of the growth, right? So China is the one of the fastest growing country in the world, right? And if you look at Russia, so it's 1.9. So good news is that there's a lot of room to grow for Russia. Then we looked at what is behind behind this big internet economy in China, and we looked at consumer side and enterprise side, right? And we found out that the previous internet the economy was largely driven by consumer side, right? So for example, if you look at the number of internet users, there's more than 600 million people versus 270 in the US. If you look at the size of the e-commerce space, right? So China is already the largest the e-commerce market in the world, right? So the consumers in China, already embraced the shift toward the internet, right? And then that was the first wave of digital revolution in China. And our friend, Alibaba did a great role in this transition. But then when we look at the opportunity, right? So especially enterprise side, we still see significant gap, right? So for example, the cloud adoption rate, SME internet adoption ratio. So if you compare China versus US, there's still a lot of gap, right? So when we think about the next wave of digital revolution, we believe that it will be coming from enterprise side, right? So largely driven by big data, right? So Internet of Things, M2M. So how enterprise is going to use internet to improve their productivity and create new market, and that's a big opportunity for our friend Huawei today. Then we looked at the contribution to the economy, right? So yes, digital revolution is happening, but then how big will be the impact, right? And we developed two different scenarios, right? So the first scenario is low adoption scenario. So basically following the current penetration trajectory, and then second case is high adoption case, right? So when everyone tries hard, right? So the government and corporates, right? Then we see somewhere between 4 to 14 trillion RMB is coming from internet. So it's up to 22% of the growth, right, over the coming decade, right? So then the stake is huge, right? So the low case and higher case, right? So there's 10 trillion RMB at stake. That's basically the size of Australia GDP whole. So internet, if everyone works hard, China will be able to add another Australia to the China's GDP. So it's going to be huge. So that was our first point about the size of the internet economy. So it's big, but it's going to be bigger. So very important. And our second message is about the quality of growth, right? The nature of growth, right? So how internet is going to change the economic development model in China, right? And there are 4 different dimensions, right? So the first dimension is about innovation. So internet will facilitate and enable better innovation, because with internet there will be new products, services will coming up, right? So there will be better innovation happening. And then that is also triggered by more competition, right? So because a lot of especially the entrepreneurs, right? So small, medium-sized enterprise, right? So with the internet, the entry barrier will be a lot lower, right? And then it's easy to scale up. So for example, use eBay or AliExpress. A small SME companies in China can immediately have an access to customers in Russia or in the United States, right? And also, lower cost structure, right? So now, the IT investment is not CapEx anymore. You can turn that into, operating expense, use that as a cloud service, which can be an opportunity for hire, right? So with this virtuous cycle between innovation and competition, China is going to be able to enjoy, higher productivity and more consumer surplus, right? And which I'll talk about in more detail. So higher productivity. So if you look at the current challenge in China, as well as Russia, so we have Russian data as well, right? So if we compare the productivity, labor productivity at the overall level and by industry level, so there is a substantial gap, across all industry, right? And then, with the internet, China or Russia or other emerging countries will be able to close this gap, right? So with big data, better process, they will be able to improve their productivity, by introducing better way of working. And then in terms of consumer surplus, right? So internet eventually with the new application will help consumers save their time, right? And save their money and improve the quality of life. So internet is going to create substantial amount of consumer value. We call it consumer surplus. Therefore it will also facilitate the more consumption in the economy and particularly in China. And the impact on job, right? So this is also one important piece of puzzle in the economy, right? And some people say that, oh, with the internet and all this automation, right? So we will all lose our job, right? With big data algorithm, we don't need all these knowledge workers anymore, etc., right? Which is true, right? So that is one bad news, right? So we looked at the impact on the job market, right? And let's say there is 758 million people, working population in China. But then the first bad news is that because of the internet, people will actually lose jobs, right? So somewhere between 10 to 30 million, right? So for example, if we do more and more internet banking, the offline bank tellers will lose their job. If we do more and more transaction, real estate transaction on the website, we don't need this real estate agents, right? So these forces are happening. So therefore there will be some reduction of jobs in the economy. So this is one bad news, right? But then there are 3 good news on the job market, right? So the first good news is that because of the internet, there will be new markets created. For example, new connected device, new mobile healthcare services, etc. So this will create new sort of job, potentially better paid job. And then second good news is that because of internet, right? So big data, a lot of banks can now reallocate their capital to SMEs, right? So currently, they don't know how to assess the risk of small, medium enterprise. With big data, they'll be able to do that, right? So then SME is, one big sector of employer in any given country, right? So that's going to create, another job opportunity. And lastly, so internet is actually going to create, consumer surplus that I just introduced, and therefore, there will be, additional consumption and therefore additional jobs. So net, we believe that the internet's impact on the job market in terms of number will be neutral, right? But then in terms of quality of job, it will be positive. And our third message was that the sector level view, right? So yes, internet is one concept, right? But then, depending on the sector, the impact, the nature and the scope and the degree of the impact will be different, right? So for example, in the consumer electronics space, right, it is highly relevant to internet and digital sector. Therefore, we see a lot more potential, right? For example, 14 to 38% of the GDP growth over the coming decade will actually be enabled by internet, right? On the other hand, if you look at the real estate sector, right, so it's not so good news, right? So because of e-commerce happening, a lot of simple transactional offline shops will be closed, right? And then with remote working solution, there will be less demand on the commercial property. So we expect potentially there could be a negative impact. So somewhere between -3 to +6 contribution to the GDP. So that was our third message. And our last message is about the actions, right? So yes, this is unprecedented. What should government do and what should companies do, right? So I'll just highlight a couple of key ones, right? So the first one is about the policy framework, right? So especially related to data. Yes, there will be more and more data generated, 50 billion connected objects to come, right? And if we use this data, yes, there will be huge benefit, but then at the same time, there will be concern on the privacy. So from government standpoint of view, how do you manage the fine balance between the privacy protection and data sharing and deliver the great value to the consumer? And then second point is about the liberalization of the market, right? So a lot of innovation can happen only within the legal boundary. So how will government liberalize the market to unleash the full potential of the internet? And lastly, in terms of companies, what should they do, right? So the first point is about the customer service mentality, right? So with the internet, the distance between you and your competitor is just one click away, right? So you really need to put your customer at the center of your business decision and reshape your operation, your organization, and so on, right? So that's first important thing. And then second important thing is extremely critical, which is adjust your strategy to prepare for a new wave of competition, right? So for example, if you look at banking industry in China, right? Who would have expected Alibaba or Tencent, these kind of companies will become a competitive threat to the traditional banking sector, by selling all those money market funds, right? So your tomorrow's competitor will be completely new company, which today you cannot even imagine, right? So you will need to really need to have a forward looking view and think about how the competitive landscape will change going forward, and then prepare for that. So that was my presentation, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very interesting view on all of the different key elements that are going to be needed in the coming years. We'd like to ask our Deputy Minister, Deputy Minister Ismailov, first of all, you come from such an incredible background. Here is somebody who speaks English, Italian, Portuguese, Turkish, Spanish, German, Russian, French, and has had such a long history working with companies like Nokia and Ericsson and Nokia Siemens. And the first question, Mr. Deputy Minister, I would like to ask you is this. The Minister and yourself has said that by 2018, 98% of Russia will be covered with much better broadband capability. Can you just tell us a little bit about this plan and why you have decided to make this go as fast as possible?
Well, that was not me, actually, who set that target. There was a big program which was called the Information Society, and that was adopted back, I think, 7 or 8 years ago, and the targets were set out there. Actually, one of the targets was that we had an ambition as government to provide the internet access with a speed of 10 megabit per second to each household, which is very ambitious. And as far as I know, for example, in Finland, at least the days back when I worked there, in the constitution of Finnish Republic of Finland, there's a statement that each household should be provided by 2 megabit per second. So we have much higher ambition, and we have a state-owned service provider, that is Rostelecom, and this 10 megabit per second is usually a big challenge actually for them to achieve. However, I mean, looking at the length of the territory and the size of the territory, we had an ambition that there shouldn't be a deprivacy in terms of, you know, people in each and every settlement in the country to have an access to that one. And there's a big program, and we have an ambition to, I think, to lay down and you know, implement and install more than 200,000 kilometers of fiber optics, which will provide, or which will achieve in each and every settlement with not less than 250 people. We have calculated that there are about 30 million people all over Russia altogether that are living in very small settlements where we have to bring internet. And the previous speaker was actually telling about how internet access boosts the economy. And there was a calculation that each, you know, the increase and the access that would be granted to these people would increase the economy and the GDP overall for 2%. That is the rough figure. And of course, I mean, since we are looking on any kind of innovative solutions, we thought that, you know, internet is something that will, you know, really boost it and trigger the economic growth. Besides, I mean, the thinking behind that was that, I mean, we are so much, actually when I was preparing my thesis for this session, I was thinking about, I've gone through several reports that I was provided, and there were some, you know, analytical reports coming from different Western companies talking about the machine-to-machine. And one of the statements was that the peculiarity of the machine-to-machine issues in the Eastern Europe and in Russia especially is that the growth is evident in the machine-to-machine industry, which is providing, you know, these kind of services to the oil, gas, and natural source kind of, you know, industries. So one of the thinking was, you know, to step or try to off-stick from this kind of, you know, industry, because we are too much, you know, linked to oil and gas industry or natural source. And with this, you know, bring some innovative issues into the economy generally. The thinking behind the internet is that just Rostelecom itself has a plan to bring the connection to many settlements that will alone increase the current usage or accessibility for the population to the internet for 15–20% altogether. Besides that, the government has an ambition to put on top of that an invest a lot to achieve this very, you know, at first sight quite unachievable figure of 97%. But it is there. And the plan is to bring the fiber optics to make it kind of net which is interconnected within the country, which will give an opportunity to the operators, for example, to have you know, a backbone or backhaul for them to provide now the mobile kind of internet services as well. So putting all these measures together, we thought that it's quite achievable figure. That's all.
So, Mr. Ismailov, one of the questions I want to ask you about the provision of services all across Russia. Many cities around the world are now developing their own chief technology officers to open up the services of city government and of national government so that the citizens have greater access to some of the key things that would improve their lives. What you're doing with your overall policy direction in Ministry of Telecoms and Mass Communication, how do you see this affecting service innovation and particularly how government enterprises can serve those communities better?
Well, as a matter of fact, I know I've met actually this guy who is personally reporting to Mr. Obama, and there are now actually two positions in the administration of the President of the United States. It's CIO and CDO. We don't have such so far, but I mean, if we are as a ministry, I mean, we have more or less, if you compare us, we are like NTIA or FCC together. Now, in the administration of the President of Russian Federation, we have a so-called the branch that is responsible for all kinds of, developing and implementing and setting the targets to us. It's called the Department of Electronic Democracy. So the word electronic democracy means itself that we want to make the broadband services or IT services as much possible, as democratic as much possible. Now, the Russian state owned enterprises and these big companies that we have that are state-owned, they are on the verge of massive usage of this big data analysis and computing. And altogether, the enterprises in the government sector, they have... Actually, there was the speech of Mr. Medvedev today, and he said that we have almost up to 30% of our GDP is created by state-owned. It's good or bad, but it's the fact. That means that we have to utilize it full scale in order to, to improve the situation altogether in terms of IT or internet. Now, this big data is gathered, and they have a massive storage of this big data on the government sector, and now on the level of the federal ministries, there's a need actually to implement this big data computing or analysis and start to work with them. What else should be said in this regard is that the government, of course, I mean, by means of usage of this big data, we can set the KPIs, so find out the indicators as regards to the performance of these state-owned companies, I mean, at least such as Gazprom or Rosneft and so forth and so forth. And when we are talking about the IT, I've seen a small reel about what is it, IT or what is not. And it's better to say what IT is not. What is not. It's hard to say what is not IT. You take any kind of industry, let it be, oil or, machinery or healthcare. Everywhere you have IT. I mean, and for us as a ministry, we are as a regulator, we are mostly dealing with setting a normal, laws or regulations in terms of improving the situation with this IT development and internet.
So Russia presently has about 235 million mobile subscribers. Is that number accurate?
I think it's more, because it's now, the penetration is more than 100%.
Exactly.
So each one, there are a lot of citizens that have more than 2 SIM cards.
Right. So if you have, let us just say, 230 to 250 million subscriber connections, the whole issue of machine-to-machine enabling which clearly is another issue for how broadband is rolled out, such that machine-to-machine devices across health, across local government, there are going to be many billions of connections, which is all part of the policy of what you're trying to implement with the national strategy, correct?
As far as I know, I mean, there are predictions that in 2000, in a couple of years, the machine-to-machine altogether, the connections will be 50 billion. I don't know what's the share of Russia in that one, but as long as we'll start to have such a big network, you know, of course, I mean, it will be increasing, and I mean, that's a big opportunity, of course, since I'm coming mostly not from IT industry, because my recent 15 or 16 years I worked for telecom companies. For telecom vendors, it's a huge opportunity to sell the equipment. Now for the operators, it's another opportunity to maybe sell big data because most of the connections will go through mobile. I mean, we predict that there will be a lot of connections going through mobile networks. So for them, for the operators, I mean, they still have this dual nature. One is to be the tube to provide the service, like voice or whatever data. Now the second could be that they can gather all this data and then somehow, you know, monetize it. For the vendors, it's a huge opportunity because, I mean, I cannot imagine how much of the equipment you have to sell in order to be able to really, you know, keep the level of service, of normal service for all these connected issues. And now there's we are talking mostly about the private sector, but I told you that we have the state-owned sector, which will require a huge, you know, a huge amount of equipment to serve it.
And, okay? and also technology innovation as well is going to be a feature of that, wouldn't you agree?
That's up to vendors. I think that I need to pass the floor to the representatives of Huawei or service providers. They know it better.
Well, okay, that's a good way to segue into Paul Scanlan from Huawei. Paul, question for you. The whole rise of big data and how it's reshaping the telecom value chain. Give us some idea of what you think the business relationship is going to be between, say, the telco, content providers, the ecosystem of mobile here in Russia, and particularly from a Huawei standpoint.
So thanks, Ralph, and thanks, Rashid. Okay, you've asked a very big, very broad question. Let me paint some pictures. Today we know that 65% of all data across all networks, 65% is video. And today the video is downstream, it's streaming. That's what we know, fact. By 2018, this figure will still be about 60 to 70%, but it'll be video as a communication. So why is it going to be video as a communication? It's going to be video as a communication because things like LTE enable a lot of uplink because the speed can be significantly higher. Also because of devices such as these, such as Apple, such as the other products, the quality of experience is so much better. So in the past, in 2000, when we launched 3G, 4G does everything 3G promised. If you press a button now, it will ring. It will ring faster than I can do this. I can video conference everybody here within 1 second. So that's one component, which is video telephony. By 2018, 2020, a lot of things will become connected. What gets connected? Every street post has a camera. Every vehicle has a machine-to-machine chip with a camera. Everywhere. Every home has multiple cameras, at least half a dozen. The average home will have 28 connections, machine-to-machine connections. A large number of those will be video. So that means the content by 2018 will be video as a communication because of the uplink, because of technology. So this is the first trend that we see, which is absolutely fact. The second problem we have in terms of innovation, just coming now to Deputy Minister's target of 98% of rural Russia connected. Today, a 4K television, opposite my apartment in China, in Shenzhen, costs $300 US. 300. A 4K TV, like you see here. A 4K TV consumes between 40 and 120 megabits per second. If I take an average household, 4 or 5 persons, 2 televisions, the broadband requirements from the home now and for the next few years is somewhere around 200 to 300 megabits. That's very difficult to achieve, especially in countries as vast as Australia and Russia and India and China. Very difficult to achieve. So that means the broadband network of the future will also have to change. The architecture will have to change. The business models will have to change. Today, everybody thinks it's about connection. It's not about connection. When all the machines are connected, when my clothes are connected, when all the cameras are connected and the homes are connected, the reason they're connected is not for connectivity. It's because of information. It's because of the information regarding people's behaviour. Today, the telecom companies want to understand subscriber behaviour because they can market to them. Every time you go to Google search, it says, "Can I know your location?" As soon as you say yes, they know how to sell to you. Why do governments want to connect everything? Because if they understand people's behaviours, then they can plan better living, better societies, better cities. And that's what we mean by smart cities. So smart cities are not just about things being connected, but smart cities are about the information, about the data analytics of all the big data. And that's the second trend, together with machine to machine. The third innovation will come in digital or e-commerce. You don't need to carry a wallet. You don't need to have money. Everything can be done from the mobile phone. My mobile phone is my access to my car, to my home, to my office. My mobile phone, I can transfer money to Alexei, to Rashid, to Ralph. I can transfer it directly with one button. Everything is controlled from the handset. When you look at things like Google Glass, the fourth thing that will happen, it's not about the glasses. Today we have 2 persons wearing glasses. As we all get older, we need glasses. If you come from Asia, you need glasses. The contact lens 2 years ago, the contact lens can project 1 foot in front of your eyes a 10 by 10 dot matrix. That means today it's 100 by 100. By the end of 2015, a contact lens will project a full high-definition video in front of your eyes. That means by 2018, 2020, there is no more smartphone. So can you see what's happening? This is an innovation forum, and we're talking about broadband and innovations in broadband. The first one is video. The second one is connection of everything. The third one, most important one, is about the information analysis, the analytics. And the fifth one is the miniaturization of technology that allows everything to become connected. And that's what companies like Huawei and the other vendors are directing their research and development into.
So, Paul, have you found that, for example, with Russian telcos, they are anticipating the kind of massive demand for delivery of all of this data, all of these services? What are you finding the situation here in Russia?
Okay, so I think because of the rural situation in Russia, you know, Russia is about mining, resources, agriculture, and it's distributed. It's a very rural population. There's a large distribution of people. So things like education, agriculture, and mining in particular need to be serviced in a different way for the rural communities, including agriculture, including farming. So I think when you try to look at business models for remote and rural communications, you can't just think to put fibre to everybody. People don't want broadband. People want what broadband can do. So, for example, if you lay, I was in Africa and I speak at the forums in Africa, and if you lay fibre to the village, a village doesn't want 1 gigabit. A village doesn't want 10 kilobits. But if the village can do R&D, then a village needs 1 gigabit. So you need to educate the rural populations. You need to stimulate the rural populations. You need education, you need health. I think for Russia, education, health, agriculture and mining, these 4 sectors, stimulated from a rural package rather than just connection, would benefit Russia. And I think an innovative business model together with the health sectors and the mining sectors and the education sectors from abroad, and to use examples from Singapore wouldn't be a bad example, then I think Russia could develop the sector a lot more quickly. But I see a huge opportunity in Russia.
Rashid, what do you think of what Paul has just said? Well, what was your view of what Paul had just said?
Well, we had a meeting back maybe 3 weeks ago in the ministry, and Paul was telling us more or less the same things about how Huawei will, respond to the challenges that we are now facing all. And for me, if you know, I used to be the VP for Huawei back some years ago. I've just left. I'm on the government service for 1 year and 9 months only. And before that, I was VP services. As far as I remember, I was the first non-Chinese VP worldwide in terms of services. And when he came, actually made a presentation, so as it was all the way on the verge, on the front line of the new technologies that were coming. I was really impressed that Huawei, and not only Huawei, other vendors as well, they have shifted their focus from traditional kind of provisioning of the voice and data service to something that is considered to be pure IT. It's about calculation and computing altogether. So I think that, but they know the networks. I mean, the vendors that are coming from Telecom, they know the way. Maybe they are not that smart in terms of computing or typical IT kind of stuff, but their knowledge in terms of networks is a big deal. Now, this shift we see not only as regards with Huawei, but other companies that were providing, telecom kind of equipment. But at the same time, we see the trend that the pure IT companies, they are starting to address their focus more and more to kind of, how to provide these services through mobile. And this convergence, as well as, the mass need of these kind of services will really, having in mind that we've met operators as well. And operators, by the way, they also have their own kind of research and development. They're more focused maybe on B2C kind of, issues and, how to invent more, applications or services in order to attract more subscribers and increase their usage of non-traditional kind of services. But that is the convergence of this trilateral kind of convergence. On top of that, governments that are starting to pay more and more attention to these issues. I think that will be a big trigger for all the companies, and that is, we're all talking about that the world economy is surviving hard times. Maybe I always recall the first report of the Rome Club that was introduced back in 1974 was called the limits of growth. Yeah. And by that time already the mankind thought that we have achieved some ceiling, and we are on the top and nothing would be improved or achieved more. They were like thoughts about the end of the history in terms of progress and technical development. But then all of a sudden we saw that this cyber revolution and IT and mobile revolution proved to be some of the biggest evidence that dragged out the mankind from where it's stuck by the middle of 70s. Now it looks like this one, this convergence and these new trends that we see in the IT, in the telecom, that will be a new boost for kind of more intensive development of the planet. Okay.
Very, very good. So now let's take a look at retail, and let's have a look at consumer areas, and let's go to Madame Maelle Gavet. Paul spoke about information analytics and data that helps consumer sales and consumer retail. So give us some idea of what you're doing at OZON with regard to big data and how that is shaping the way you are presenting your platform and trying to connect with a wider, deeper audience across Russia.
All right. Hi, good afternoon. So OZON actually is a retailer, but it's most and for all a technology company. We see ourselves as an IT company. Most of our employees are IT people. And when we talk about what we do, yes, we do move goods from one point to another. Yes, we do sell airline tickets. Yes, we do sell shoes as well. But most and for all, we are focused on developing IT platform and IT solutions that help us to do all of that a lot better. And so when we talked about the big data panel, we were like, oh, that's definitely about us. We actually, we've been thinking and working on the big data topics for a long time. OZON is 16-year-old. We've been talking and working on that for probably around 10 years. And so for us, it's really something we feel very strong about, and we think that our industry is actually being shaped by what's happening right now in big data. And we do think that a lot of people, including journalists, don't necessarily understand everything that is possible to do with big data. I was speaking with a journalist not long ago, an American one from Bloomberg, to not name them. We had an hour-and-a-half discussion about what we in OZON do about big data, where we talk about algorithm and prediction and everything we do with it. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. And everything he wrote about this 1.5-hour conversation is that in winter, Russian people buy more warm boots, and thanks to this algorithm, we're capable of predicting that. And that was about it, the 1.5-hour conversation about big data. So in reality, big data is a lot more than that, and I just wanted to give you 4 very concrete examples of what we do in OZON with all this data that we accumulate, because with 17 million customers, we obviously have a lot of information available. And it is for us a really, really important source of knowledge and efficiency in our business. All of that is about prediction. Basically, all the big data, all the things we do with big data is about predicting behavior and predicting processes that we need to put in place. The first thing we do is what we call recommendation algorithm. On this recommendation algorithm, we built a lot of the functionalities that exist on our website. If you go into any page that has a product, you will see recommendation about the type of product you can buy with. We do bundles, which are also based on what we think you're probably going to be interested in. If you go into the cart, so when you do the checkout, you will see also recommendation. This is something that is extremely widely used by other retailers, including people like Amazon. What is important to know is that this recommendation, which is displayed in the cart, has increased our sales by 25% since we implemented. 25% of the orders, 25% of the items which are placed in the cart have been placed because we recommended that item to the person who was in the process of doing a purchase. So that's extremely important. We also use this recommendation algorithm for marketing because we used to do emailing based on a set of hypotheses. So for example, you live in Moscow, based on what you bought, we kind of guess that you're probably a woman. We see that you bought some product for kids, so we assume that you probably have kids. And so when comes back the back to school season, we will start sending you emails with any type of goods for your kids to prepare them to go to school, basically. But that would be very, very wide, very high-level hypotheses which are done by the human brain. With big data, with all the information we have and with the algorithm that we're capable of using, we can actually send you what we call one-to-one communication, where we know precisely for you what could be useful in terms of product. And that's hugely powerful because, again, when you have 17 million people in your customer database, and you can do one-to-one marketing, that fundamentally changes the type of product people, the amount of product people will buy and the type of product they will buy. So that's the first very useful application. The second very useful application is when it comes to stock management. A retailer like OZON.ru has 3.5 million products, and most of them are actually in stock. This is huge warehouses that cost a lot of money, a lot of money that we mobilize in the warehouse, and obviously anything we can do to improve the turnover of this product is actually extremely useful from a financial perspective. What we do with big data is we predict the demand from consumers, and based on that we adapt our stock. Since we implemented this algorithm of stock prediction a bit over 3 years ago, we have been able to increase the turnover of our product by more than 40%, which means that we've been able to decrease for this specific product the stock level by more than 40%. This is huge. For a business like ours that operates on very thin margin, this is absolutely crucial. That's the difference between being profitable and not being profitable. That's the second thing. The third thing on which we work a lot is we use this to predict fraud. Russia is a country that uses a lot of payment on delivery, very few prepayment. And this question of understanding who is actually doing a genuine order and who is not doing a genuine order has a huge impact on the number of returns we have. Having a predictive algorithm that allows us to spot fraud or what we think could be a fraud allows then our customer service department to actually get in touch with the customer and validate that the order is indeed a genuine order. Again, huge impact on sales, less return, less cost. And the last thing is still very much at the beginning, and we're still learning a lot in that area. Last example is everything we do about logistics. I mentioned the algorithm based on focused on the stock. We have the same type of algorithm to help us optimize our warehouses, optimize the way we organize shift in the different warehouses based on how many orders we believe there are going to be, how many items we believe they're going to be in the order, and what is going to be the size of the order. That has huge impact on the number of people we employ and how we organize their shift. The same type of algorithm helped to optimize the delivery, because we have trucks, we have pickup point, we have 2,000 of them. We need to make sure that we understand very well and predict very well how many people we need to dedicate to every single one of this area. And so that's also a very big area of big data. We're very much at the beginning. We feel very strong about the first three I mentioned. The fourth one is still being developed. We're hiring people, so if you know anybody who is interested in that, we're very much looking for it. There is in Russia a very strong school based on very strong mathematical schools and probability that does very, very good study. We have hired a few people from there, and I think Russia is very, very well placed to fundamentally use this big data trend.
So one question I want to ask you, hearing what you say about predictability,
yes,
predicting trading, and particularly with a business like yours where your margins are really, really thin, what about customer service delivery? Does predicting your big data question also help you service those customers? A lot of people in your area of retail, online and on mobile, look at a famous company internationally called Zappos Shoes,
yes,
who believe in the customer and the culture of the company is #1. But give us an idea of how, for Russian consumers, you are really improving customer service, customer delivery.
So I think I think big data does not exclude the human part of any business, and I think the idea that we could regulate any operations, be e-commerce or anything else, through big data, and that we can have a bunch of robots managing all of that, and that customer will be happy thanks to that, is a fantasy. It's not the way business should be run. The human part, I think, when we talk about delivery, we obviously use big data to, for example, optimize what's the best shift, because people order delivery in different places and at different times. So the predictability that we get through this big data analysis allows us to better optimize, which means that you will queue less, that we will be able to do delivery next day, that we will guarantee the delivery time that we show on the website. But fundamentally, the human touch is always the most important. It's the courier coming to your house and saying, "Hello, how are you? Can I help you? Let me look at you when you try this dress, because we also sell dress and shoes." It's the cash person in the pickup point that also talks to you. It's the CRM person who pick up the phone when you have a problem because you receive what you order and that's not exactly what you wanted. I think fundamentally any technology company needs to keep in mind that they are, before a technology company, a human company, and that is the most important.
Very, very good point. Alexander, tell us about what you've thought about hearing these comments from the Deputy Minister, from the other, what Paul said about information analytics. What's happening at maelle.ru?
Thank you. The OZON presentation is so similar to things that we are doing that I think it's something fundamental. It's not only about retail, it's about all modern business. The maelle.ru is communications company. It's a new word that means communication and entertainment. The main business areas for us are communication services such as social networks, email, internet messengers, and so on, and online games. The most important revenue streams for us are advertising, value-added services from our users, and games, that is value-added services in games. And prediction is very important in all these streams. In advertising, our goal is to show the most relevant advertisement for this user. We know that this user is from this city, he sees that pages and so on, and we have thousands and thousands goods or other kinds of advertisement for him, and our goal is to find the most relevant one in this time on that page for this user. It's a very big deal, it's very difficult, but we do it. The second stream is value-added services on social networks, such as virtual goods and so on. We know, for example, that parents gifts 4 times more gifts to their children than children to their parents. It's a small example, but of course we know something from every user, which good he like, which page he like, which friend is his best friends, what he is thinking. Sometimes user thinks that his best friends is one guy, but we know that his real best friends is other guy, and we usually know it's better than the user. So we can suggest him more relevant good, more relevant gift, and so on. The very similar things in games. We know which magic sword is very good for this person today, and which magic sword will be better tomorrow. It's based on very big analytics on user behavior, on other user behavior, of even magic sword behaviors. the other important thing for us is security. The fraud is not so expensive for us as in OZON, but security risks are important too. So if we know what user like, we can decide if a user real user or it's robot, bot, or other bad guy. And big data techniques helps us in that decision. The very big challenge is to find good people who can make these products, who can make these analytics. It's very difficult to find them on market in Moscow, in Russia, and I think in all the world. We try to make them. We have an educational program with Moscow State University which about big data. The students have additional education from our specialists, and I think we have about 30 or 40 new good big data engineers each year, which is very important for us and I think for all Russian market. Thank you.
So you are developing technologies to help. By the way, how many people are on VK now?
Do you mean engineers or users?
Users.
I think about 40 million monthly.
40 million monthly.
Yeah.
And still growing.
Sure.
Fantastic side. Okay, so Mark Zavadskiy. Mark, AliExpress, Alibaba, very important company, more valuable than Yahoo, more valuable than many, many companies on the US stock markets. Jack Ma is now one of the great billionaires of the world. He even made $38 billion for SoftBank. But that's another story. Tell us about AliExpress and some of your ways in which you are going to be growing AliExpress and the Alibaba business in Russia and CIS.
Thank you. Like first of all, I think I'd like to use some of the Alexander's services and to know who my real friends are, because after the IPO, I got many new friends, as our moderator very rightly noted. So I think I need some services, some big data to find out who my real friends are. Yeah, Alibaba is a big household name right now, which came up as a big surprise for many people, and lots of people heard about Alibaba, but not many of them know exactly what we do. So, if we go deeper to our core business, it's actually all about big data. Of course, we collect lots of information about our consumers, and we do lots of marketing tools. But I don't want to focus on this side of our business. I think Alibaba and AliExpress model is a bit different from many of our competitors, because we see ourselves not just as a big company, but more like as a part of ecosystems that we create ourselves. That's what happened in China already. Basically, we came to the non-existent market in a way, and we created an ecosystem, a kind of the blue ocean of small clients, of small sellers, and we grow with them. Basically, our success, our future depends a lot, or significantly, or purely on how our ecosystem grows with us. And the only way for our ecosystem to grow is that our clients know exactly what they're doing. And I think we can take, not me personally, of course, but my colleagues in China can really take this a very big credit for educating people on the ground about internet, about big data. Because what happened with our major product in China, it's called Taobao, right? It's now probably the biggest, or one of the biggest e-commerce websites in the world. So what happened is that our people came to lots of small stores in China, just ordinary people, and tell them, you know what, you've been selling your products to your villagers, to some people like nearby you. Now you can sell online to billions of people like inside China. Like, would you like to do this? And say, okay, like, why not? Let's try. So they tried, and they grew very quickly, and suddenly they found out that the growth stopped, and they came to us and asked, I've been selling this on Taobao for like 2-3 years. I've been doing very well. What happened now? And we tell them, look, now we have 50,000 more people selling like almost the same things as you do. So now let us introduce a concept of big data to you. So now you need to know your customer, and we can help you like with this. I said, okay, yes. So now they started to sell to Chinese customers, but with much better knowledge of what they're selling, why they're selling, and who they're selling to. Then we came to them and say, you know what, now we can sell not just to Chinese customers, but all over the world. So let's open for you a world of 6 billion people that you can sell to, like directly from your warehouse, from your flat. I said, okay, let's do this. So we started to sell like worldwide. And now actually they are entering a new stage when they are using kind of big data about worldwide customers to increase their sales. And I think this is like the main point, that we collect lots of big data, lot of data from about our consumers, but we don't keep it for ourselves. We share it extensively with our partners, because without them we really cannot grow. And I just give you like a couple of examples of how we do it. We just started some time ago a program called Ali Loan. Basically, it's a microfinance like loans to individuals and small companies in China, and we do it by using our algorithms that we used to that we actually done for our e-commerce business, and it turned out to be cheaper and more effective than traditional banking algorithms. And now lots of sellers on Taobao actually use Ali loans to get some money to move their production up or to increase their volumes. And also the bad loans ratio is very low and within normal banking standards. So I think this is very important how this concept of big data is spreading out to the very distant corner of China and around the world.
So the question is whether a China model can work in Russia and the CIS, or whether you need to have contextual relevance for Russia. Paul, I'll ask you a question on contextual relevance and how you plan your Huawei implementation in Russia. Do you think that what Mark has said about a China model, do you think that you can just impose that on the Russian telecom economy? That's for you, baby.
I think one of the key successes to Alibaba in China is the logistics availability in China. And that doesn't really exist in the same form around the world. So for people to have the ability to do online shopping, you need, as Mark mentioned, the ecosystem. And one component of the ecosystem is logistics. So you need to be able to place the order and ensure that everything in the entire supply chain, including the transportation and delivery to the customer at the end, can be done very effectively, very quickly, and very cost, because it's all about money. The other part is about the partnership model. So if you don't have an ecosystem that makes a healthy partnership with competition, then it's impossible to get cost under control. And it's impossible to, as Mark mentioned, the micro-innovation that exists throughout Asia and China. And the micro-innovation, the partnership, and the logistics capability of China and Alibaba, I think, are the three success ingredients.
Rashid, you've heard these experts talking about micro-competition, talking about miniaturization, talking about video as communication. Does the future look bright for telecoms and mass media Russia?
Weren't we talking about Alibaba?
Well, we're talking about the whole ecosystem,
Alibaba in
and
Russia.
you're in a position where you can accelerate and speed up modernization, competition. How do you feel about that?
I'm now a little bit worried since Alibaba is coming to Russian market, because we have our own Russian company that are dealt with, that is dealing with the retail, and that is OZON. Competition is always good, but I think that the same kind of horror has eBay now in the United States since Alibaba came in there. I mean, but all in all, competition is good. It's just what we have to do is just to organize the environment that has to be convenient for this competition for all the companies. And of course, I mean, we would like all these companies to follow Russian laws, tax legislation, and so far and so forth. That is all.
Rashid, which areas in Russia, which areas outside of Moscow, St. Petersburg, do you see the greatest potential for fast development of this area? People talk of Kazan, obviously, very important, but what about other major areas in Russia?
Maybe I have to say that it's Kazan because the minister is, my boss is from Kazan. That's not only it is not the only region actually. Last week I was, I had a quite, big, long business trip, and I visited Nizhny Novgorod, and that is, as far as I know, the 4th largest city in Russia. And then I went through all this, Volga river based on the shores, on the coast of Volga. See, I was in Saransk also and in Penza. I was really impressed. Usually when I'm coming, I'm in the ministry, I'm not responsible only for IT development, but for international relationships, or cooperation as well. Each time when I'm coming back from abroad, I'm in a bad mood because I'm always thinking that, okay, we are far behind from all those highly developed countries and with their nice things like Huawei or Alibaba or, Microsoft or whatever. But that's, as long as I started to travel Russia, I saw so many, and I was, on purpose visiting the technoparks that the government is, investing in. And I was really amazed how many creative things are existing there, and they are doing that. And I would like that the Far East would be the region that should, be developed. It's a big issue for us because on the east to the Ural Mountains we have just 35 million population. True, I mean the vast majority of the territory is not inhabited, but altogether, of course, I would like, having in mind that we have here as a special guest for this forum, China, and we have so, the length of the border with China is so big. We would like, of course, that the Far East should be developed. And there are, some kind of turmoil, unrest regions, that is Caucasus. It's not Chechnya anymore, but for Dagestan and the rest. I mean, it's a high rate on unemployment there, and the level of development is far behind the desirable one.
Right.
So this is, and having in mind that I'm myself from Caucasus, I would like this region to be developed as well, okay?
So what you're saying is that the next Mark Zuckerberg or Sergey Brin will be coming from Nizhny Novgorod.
Or from Makhachkala, maybe.
Exactly. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've run out of time, but we'd like to give a very big thanks, of course, to Alexander Gornyy. Alexander, thank you. To Paul Scanlan from Huawei, thank you. Mr. Seong, your initial slides really set the scene for this, which was really great. Mark Zavadskiy, we are on the AliExpress. And, of course, Maelle, bringing some femininity and women's intuition, and also a retailer's intuition. Thank you so much. And, of course, to the Deputy Minister, to Rashid Ismailov, thank you so much. Very, very eye-opening. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you have a good time here at Innovation Forum. Thank you. My name is Ralph Simon, and it was really terrific being with you all today. Thank you. Спасибо.